Welcome back to Grow Tropical Fruits. Today I want to do a grafting video just because I got a bunch of scions in of different varieties and it's going to start raining tomorrow for like another week, so I figured today's my only day to do it. A group of scions are Otto Anderson Selection. I believe it was called a cauliflora, but it might be a coronata or vice versa. I forget which way. I'll have to grow it out and see what the leaves look like and give my own opinion on it. I believe this is one of the first introductions of Otto Anderson, so we'll find out what it is. So the bigger ones were already wrapped up pretty good in buddy tape, so let's play with those first. So just looking at this, you can identify where the bottom and the top is based on the way the branches are growing. See, this branch is growing upward, so this is the bottom that we're going to graft. This looks more appropriate sized, but since it's down in this pot really deep and it's going to be kind of hard to access, I'm going to try and pull it out of the pot. So we'll take our pruning shears and cut off what's not needed. Sometimes I'll leave like a little bit of foliage underneath the graft attached for the photosynthesis to still be able to take place while the graft is starting to heal. I'm looking kind of at the bulk, this portion right here, not so much the exact bottom, to see if it lines up nicely, because chances are I'm not going to get the cut right the first time. It'll get further and further up here. So you can see at the bottom here, where it's brown, that's where it's dying back to. So I'm going to need to have my graft kind of end up here, or my cut. Find the exact opposite side. So let's proceed with trying to get this cut nicely. So let's try and straighten this out. So I want to get this side to be flush with that side and cut deeper into this side to match it up. Easier said than done, but we'll just do a few shaves. And now we're going to be cutting deeper into this side to match it up more. So we matched that side pretty good. We're getting closer. Okay. Do it right there and see what happens. Find the spot we want to cut, and you just kind of just go down the center with the rocking motion, kind of to split the wood or get it to go through without exerting a ton of force. The knife is very sharp and it will cut you really easily and slice right through or break out the side. So I think we're about good right there. And see how they line up. So now we just get a piece of buddy tape and start wrapping from the bottom up and go on up. Being careful to not dislodge or move the position of the graft as you go. and to make sure that you overlap the previous pass of the tape to make a watertight seal. On the first pass, you don't necessarily need to go super tight. You're just kind of holding things in there in their appropriate position. When we do additional wraps and passes, it will cinch it as tight as it needs to be. So we're just pulling and stretching and then wrapping, kind of in two motions, where you pull and stretch and then you wrap. You make sure to not like pull it against the graft union. By that I mean you hold the piece with this hand and you're just pulling from your fingers and not pulling on the graft itself. And then you do the wrap with medium pressure. If you just try and stretch and pull at the same time while you wrap, it's going to pull against the graft union and can dislodge it or break it, or just it breaks the tape pretty easily as well. So now that we got that wrapped up pretty good, I'm just going to let it, I didn't mean to break that. I just let it kind of cinch tight like a rope. And mostly just focusing on the cut and the union. You don't want to wrap up here too tight. That can choke off the nutrients and create a girdle. So I'd say that's okay. That's good to go. Put it back in its pot and label it before we forget. So now I have some Trunciflora. I'm going to look at the scions, see what we're working with, and I just grab the biggest one and start with that one. I like this one right here. Try that one. This one I'm going to leave part of the canopy attached, lower than the graft union. Just going to cut this back. This time I'm cutting the rootstock first. I'm just going to lob off the bottom a little bit. Make sure it's green inside. Spot it wants to line up at. Well, first things first, this is too low in this pot. So let's bring it out like the last one. Whoa, don't twist it like I just did. That piece hit me in the face. Alright to me. But we're going to take this knot out right there. The downside to doing this is you're making the scion shorter. See how that works? With these type of things, less is more when you're cutting because if you think, oh, I get it a little bit better, and you cut it and it's just gonna walk away from you, you're gonna have a scion the size of an inch by the time you're done trying to replicate your previous cuts. At least that's my experience. So let's look close and see and how this lines up. This side is a little weird, but it'll push together when we wrap it. And we get to play with this branch right next to it. That's going to be in our way. Which is, it might be removed from this tree so that I can get a better seal on it actually. I'm just going to kind of do this around the bottom wrap to keep it watertight from any cuts or cracks that went below where the tape can actually reach because of this branch. And then I'll just wrap it tighter in this one spot that needs it. Okay. So now let's finish this piece of tape on here. It's probably alright at this point, but I'm not able to put a good amount of pressure on it because of the branch in my way. We'll just keep moving on. Bit of a disclaimer, this is probably not the most ideal time to be grafting, being almost the new year, a couple of days away from New Year's. But being in Hawaii allows for the option to try, at least because it doesn't get too cold. It's been dropping to maybe mid-50s at the coldest. Probably warm enough to stay alive. Plus a lot of the Plinias are really happy right now and putting out a lot of new growth, so maybe this is a good time in Hawaii. So that, I think, will be good enough. We'll put it back in its hole. Next variety we got here is a Ponhema. So I'll take the bigger of these two. These are considered micrografts. Some inspection cuts to see where the green is. And this looks pretty dang close. Cut off the side branch. So if I cut this way, the scion is that big. But if I cut it this way, it gets bigger. So I'm going to cut it most wide I can. Now that's like perfect. Let's see if I can mimic that on the other side. That piece hit me in the face. Now let's wrap it up. Okay, so I just did one wrapping from the bottom all the way to the top. Normally with micrographs, I would probably put them in like a humidity dome and maybe not even wrap the whole scion. But in this case, it doesn't have any leaves attached to it. So I'm just gonna wrap it up, and I was just careful to not bend it or break it. If you're dealing with scions smaller than this, then just the act of wrapping it is probably gonna break it because they just are so fragile. This one still is a little bit rigid to it, and it can hold up to the abuse that I'm putting on it, or at least I believe. I'll find out, I guess, if this takes. I don't want to wrap the top more than just one layer, because then it can be an impenetrable barrier for the new growth to come out. That's why it's better to stretch it and not have it like in its original unstretched form, because it's a thicker product when it's not stretched out. Caipirinha, which is like a dwarf Ponhema. Yeah, let's see if this one will work. It's quite a bit different. So what I'll try and do is actually cut it off to the side to get it to line up better. This way I'm using a bigger rootstock. So a smaller size, but I'm also going to cut it off to the edge, off center instead of directly on the center. Or at least I'll attempt to. This one's really easy to slip and cut yourself when you're doing ones that are not down the center. So the idea is just to really go slow. There's no rush on this. Keep getting it shorter and shorter. This is what I was talking about. It's easy for this to happen. I want it longer. I'm just going to do some shaving to make it a little bit longer. Okay. Looks good on that side to me. I'm just starting to wrap pretty far below the union just to get it started. That way I'm not fumbling around with the union trying to get the thing to start wrapping. So now that I'm here, just make sure nothing moves while you tighten it up. I'm gonna hold these pieces together while I stretch the tape. So I'm gonna go above the union and then finish wrapping the rest of the scion. So I'm just trying to be really careful not to put any pressure against the scion when I stretch the tape, because that just will lead to breaking it or pulling it out. So I pre-stretch it and then wrap up, and when I get close to where it needs to stretch again, I'll hold against and just use my fingers as the anchor to pull against. So let's just get the top wrapped. So now we're just going to do one more piece of tape just around the graft union and make sure it's nice and snug. And with these micros, you don't have to wrap them super tight, but I'm just putting a decent amount of layers on it to keep it protected outdoors. A lot of other people typically wrap a different kind of tape on it, or they'll do like a thicker garden tape or clip, like a clothespin, to kind of just keep the pressure on there. I'm just doing it with just buddy tape. But let's label this one. Cut it back. Match up with the other one. Oh, I just can't catch a break with this one. Alright, it's going to be a little crooked. Looks good enough to me. here I just pulled this bag off of this largest graft I've tried doing. This is a fruiting Sabara branch of a tree that just fruits like crazy. It's probably like a 30-year-old tree in the next town over. So I grafted this over, and you can see all this new growth popping out. Because it's such a large scion, it could just be pushing growth regardless of if this is actually grafted. So because of that, I'm going to leave the bag on for longer just to keep the humidity high in there until the tree has a chance to leaf out pretty good. My hope is to have this fruiting Sabara branch onto this pretty mature rootstock. It's probably like 4 years old, in hopes to getting this to fruit a lot faster. So I'm going to try this out. If it works, I will be grafting large scions of Sabaras onto larger rootstocks just to speed it up. It's about 23 or 24 grafts. Some are micrografts. I did a double graft on this rootstock. Some decent sized ones. There's Otto Anderson, Trunciflora, Restinga, Caipirinha, some micros over here. So micro Ponhema. Hope you guys have a happy new year. And if you have any questions, leave me a comment to follow along with what I'm doing and catch some updates on these projects I have and experiments. Subscribe, and you guys have a good one. Aloha.